What's up, Taiwan? I'm Yvonne with news from here in Taiwan and around the world. Hongkongers living in exile in Taiwan have condemned the sentencing of 45 pro-democracy activists in Hong Kong under its new national security law. They say the decision represents a major setback for the democratic movement in the Chinese territory. Chris Goran reports.
Activists and Hong Kongers living in Taiwan are condemning the sentencing of 45 pro-democracy activists in Hong Kong for political subversion. At this event here in Taipei, they're trying to draw even more attention to the issue.
大家不去捍卫这一个自由民主的说话，有可能就真的明天就会变成好像香港一样，没有办法开一个这样的记者会。这个请大家真的好好看一下。
45 of the 47 activists and former politicians received between 4 and 10 years for holding an unofficial legislative primary election in 2020, which Hong Kong authorities say was an attempt to overthrow the government. They were prosecuted under a Beijing-imposed national security law, which gives the government wide authority to bring charges against political crimes. Although such a judgment was expected, activists say it was still shocking to learn of such long sentences, which marks a new era of Hong Kong politics in which once thriving democratic movements have been essentially squashed. The presidential office here in Taipei has criticized the ruling, and it's also drawn widespread condemnation from the United Nations and governments around the world. Many Hong Kongers living in Taiwan fled here to escape the exact kind of persecution these 45 defendants have endured.
其实这个民主运动并没有放弃，因为只要我们内心不放弃的话，其实还是会有的。包括可能在判刑当中，我们也知道很多人选择不认罪，所以这种不认罪其实也是一种抵抗的方式。
Despite the setback of this sentencing, activists here say they will continue working to keep the democratic movement in Hong Kong alive. Hank Xu and Chris Goran in Taipei for TaiwanPlus.
And for more on the landmark sentencing of dozens of pro-democracy activists in Hong Kong, our reporter Tiffany Wong spoke with former Hong Kong District Councillor Michael Mo.
And did anything about this sentencing surprise you?
Of course, they should not. They should have never been in the jail in the first place. But looking into the length of their sentences, I think the handpicked national security judges in Hong Kong reference similar offenses in China to pretty much hand down that kind of length, and also considered whether they plead guilty or not. So it is not quite a surprise in that sense, because we compare what the prominent Chinese activists in China, like Liu Xiaobo or Li Wangyang, they pretty much face a similar length of sentences, just like Benny Tai. But what surprised me is that the handpicked national security judges didn't go all the length to reference the recent sentencings of those Chinese dissidents which face 2 decades of imprisonment.
The unofficial primaries, were they really unofficial? What was their goal there?
So according to the laws of Hong Kong, there is no recognized primary election of any kind. So that's why it is an unofficial one that is held among the pro-democracy camp. The Hong Kong authorities didn't go after the organizers or the candidates of these unofficial primaries before the NSL has been imposed. But soon after the NSL came into force, it is the Hong Kong authorities, one of the ministers, warned that such an unofficial primary calling for the 5 major demands of the Hong Kong's pro-democracy movement were deemed illegal under such law.
What's your reaction to hearing the sentencing? I mean, obviously we knew it's coming for a long time, but for Hong Kongers and for you being so involved in the pro-democracy movement, what did that feel like?
I think because of the case had been dragged for so long that a length of the sentences itself is rather not so striking to me rationally. emotionally, I would say it might. I just imagine it might be a relief for some of the people who I know. Some of them, I'm like my friends, might be a bit relief to see that there's a light at the end of the tunnel. This is quite paradoxical situation, isn't it? But it is what it is, and I just simply hope that when they could set foot to freedom, they could just enjoy their lives and hope to see them one day soon.
You can watch the full conversation with former Hong Kong District Councillor Michael Mo on Zoom In, Zoom Out. Another critical national security trial in Hong Kong has resumed, with media outlet Apple Daily publisher Jimmy Lai set to testify for the first time after 4 years in detention. Lai, a 76-year-old British national, has pleaded not guilty on the 2 charges against him of conspiracy to collude with foreign forces and publishing seditious materials. 6 of his former senior staffers have pleaded guilty. The pro-democracy newspaper was raided in 2020, and Lai has been held in detention since then on an unrelated sentence for fraud. The national security trial has faced multiple delays. If convicted, he may face life in prison. The recent death of a Labor Ministry employee is drawing attention to workplace bullying in government agencies. As John Van Trieste reports, Taiwan's main 3 political parties all have tough questions for the ministry about a case that's bringing to light issues with the country's work culture.
The heat is on for Labor Minister Ho Pei-shan over the suicide of a ministry employee at the start of November. Despite an apology and a pledge to deal with overwork, lawmakers across party lines want to know what she and her ministry plan to do about workplace bullying. The ministry itself has found problems in the department where the employee worked, here at the northern branch of the Workplace Development Agency. These include illegal 14- and 15-hour workdays required regularly, covered up with fake clock-in records. But it's the boss in charge that has attracted lawmakers' attention, with officials themselves describing her as abusive.
处长的他会有咆哮、侮辱、贬低同仁的这些行为，让同仁精神压力非常的大，甚至也有同仁因为这样子。
This boss has been demoted and won't be going back into management. But some lawmakers aren't satisfied, as an initial ministry review has not found bullying to be a direct cause of the employee's death. And at a committee meeting early Wednesday, they had questions about that and other bullying issues for the labor minister.
调查报告明明列出了一大堆谢芬署长长久以来的职场霸凌行为，但对于这件轻生个案却说 无法证明该员工有遭受长官的职场霸凌，请问这到底是什么逻辑啊？你根据这个调查的事实，也推不出这样的结论啊。
Other lawmakers pointed to other cases of bullying in government agencies and said that complaints are often referred to the same bosses doing the bullying. Through the questioning, the labor minister said the case shows there are problems in its system, acknowledged bullying, and promised to make improvements.
所以我们也启动了这一个要精进的方案呢。其实我本来就规划从明年开始，现在已经正在办采购，就是希望及时提供心理医师、心理咨商以及精神科医师就医的实际支持。
But Democratic Progressive Party lawmaker Lin Shufan says it's not news that bullying is widespread in Taiwanese workplaces, citing a survey by Job Bank 1111 done last year. It found 83% of workers had been bullied on the job, and that government workers are among those worst affected.
我觉得这是我们国家的耻辱啊！怎么国家的公务体系，怎么公务部门、公务机关被霸凌的状况这么严重，比民间还要更严重呢？
That's a question that the Labor Ministry, the very organization charged with labor rules and their enforcement, will have to face as the fallout from its employee's death spreads. Leon Lien and John Van Trieste for TaiwanPlus.
U.S. Congressional Commission has suggested including Taiwan in a list of NATO plus countries. The report by the United States-China Economic and Security Review Commission says that Taiwan should be granted special status to speed up arms sales. NATO plus status is used for close U.S. allies who are not in the NATO alliance but have a special security partnership with Washington, such as Japan and South Korea. Weapon sales to these countries only require congressional approval if the purchase exceeds $25 million, higher than the $14 million threshold for non-member countries. In the first, Ukraine has bombed targets inside Russia with U.S.-supplied missiles. Ukraine has been using the Army Tactical Missile Systems, or ATACMS, for over a year in areas of the country occupied by Russia. U.S. President Joe Biden recently lifted restrictions on their use against targets in Russia after Moscow deployed North Korean troops against Ukraine. Russia has called the change an escalation and says it will proceed as though the missiles were fired with the help of U.S. military experts. Several people were hurt after a Hezbollah airstrike hit central and northern Israel. Israel's military says the strikes hit a residential area north of Tel Aviv, despite dozens of rockets being intercepted. The assault comes 2 days after Israeli strikes on a densely populated area in Lebanon's capital, Beirut. Those attacks killed Hezbollah media chief Mohammed Afif and 3 other people. It also comes as top U.S. officials hold talks in Beirut for a truce between Iran-backed Hezbollah and Israel. Negotiators at the COP29 climate summit are scrambling to secure the money needed to reverse the impact of global warming. But new financing deals may now happen thanks to leaders at the G20 talks. Rosie Greninger explains.
As the United Nations COP29 climate summit enters its final day in Baku, Azerbaijan, delegates are rushing to hash out a deal for more funding to combat global warming. And they're getting help from UN Chief Antonio Guterres at another summit halfway around the world. Speaking at the G20 meeting in Brazil, Guterres urged the leaders of the world's richest countries to make a commitment to saving the environment, saying failure is not an option.
The climate crisis has burned through another record, with 2024 likely to be the hottest year in history. We see the impacts everywhere and look no further than the drought in the Amazon and horrible floods in southern Brazil.
Negotiations seeking significantly scaled-up climate funding had stalled at COP29 due to lack of consensus among members. But as the G20 ended, leaders backed the increase. In a joint statement, the group called for rapidly and substantially increasing climate finance from the billions to the trillions to pay for the response to climate change. The G20 leaders also reaffirmed their commitment to the 2015 Paris Agreement and the transition away from fossil fuels. With G20 member countries playing an important role in the decision-making at COP29, holding 85% of global GDP, it's brought an agreement a step closer.
We appreciate the signal that they have sent of their intention to accelerate the reform of the international financial architecture. We thank them for their support for a successful NCQG outcome in Baku. We now need to translate political will into practical work.
COP29 negotiators are now tasked with the job of reaching a concrete deal on how much money richer nations must provide to developing countries to aid them in moving away from fossil fuels, funding that delegates from poorer nations say is crucial.
We are constrained by the lack of adequate climate finance, just like many other least developed countries. It is imperative that developed nations fulfill their existing climate finance commitments. The new collective quantified goals represent a pivotal opportunity to correct past shortcomings.
The toll of climate change on show outside the conference venue as protesters exhibited items recovered from natural disasters around the world. Just a small reminder of how much worse things could get if negotiators can't reach an agreement in the next 2 days. James Lin and Rosie Greninger for TaiwanPlus.
Thank you for watching What's Up Taiwan. You can visit the TaiwanPlus website or follow our social media for more stories from Taiwan and around the world. Now, before we go, we take you to Egypt to see the pyramid puppies, where stray dogs have become a major tourist draw. I'm Yvonne Yang. Take care, and I'll see you next time.